This is Brian Rowe, and I'm very excited to bring you the very last episode of Film at 50. Enjoy. Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I am honored today to welcome the great Christy Lemire to Film at 50 to talk about a big one, Paper Moon, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, released 50 years ago in May of 1973. How are we doing, Christy?
I am so great. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for asking me on today.
Absolutely. It's so nice to meet you. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan. I've gone back all the way back to At the Movies in 2011 to What the Flick to Breakfast All Day. You are a delight, Christy. So this is
Oh,
a huge thrill.
thank you. You're very sweet. Thank you. So you're the one who watched At the Movies. I was always wondering who was our viewer. We had like a handful, my husband and you and Roger. So thank you for watching.
I was very sad when that left. I was
Oh,
very sad. And then
it was great.
I was like, what's Christy up to? You know, a year or two later, I was looking around YouTube and I discovered What the Flick.
Oh,
And
cool.
that was great. And then when you started up Breakfast All Day, I don't miss a single episode, Christy. I
Oh.
watch all the movie news, reviews. I'm like, what did they think about this one? Like before I
Oh.
go see the movie, right? So that's what it's all about.
You're so sweet. Thank you. So, do you find that you agree with us, or are you more excited about something if you don't agree with us?
It's not even about if I agree or disagree. I just love your chemistry with Alonzo. Like
Oh,
it's just so infectious.
oh,
It makes me excited about cinema.
oh.
Like it's just growing up, I watched Siskel and Ebert religiously, and so I'm always kind of looking for that, kind of banter between critics, and that's what I get from you and Alonzo.
Oh.
Twice a week now. For a while, you were doing it right once a week. Now it's Tuesdays and Fridays, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
You're so sweet. Thank you. You know what? And that's such a nice compliment and such an honor. Like nobody could ever be them. We genuinely love each other and we're really dear friends. And Gene and Roger like hated each other. Like that rivalry was legit. Like they would sabotage and undermine each other. Like when you saw them sniping at each other, like that was real. And then they came to in time affectionately
Mhm.
regard one another. But it took a long time. So I've never had that kind of hatred. So when we chat, like it's just having a conversation, kind of like you and I are. Hopefully, it feels like a genuine, natural, organic thing.
What are your memories from doing Roger Ebert's show in 2011? Like,
Oh
what was that
gosh.
time like for you?
Oh gosh. Well, I live in Los Angeles, and so
Hmm.
and everyone was in Chicago. So I would
Oh,
fly
okay.
to Chicago twice, every 2 weeks, and we would get a couple of episodes out of the way. And Ignatiy Vishnevetsky, who I co-hosted it
Hmm.
with, had never done any kind of television before. Roger met him at screenings in Chicago and thought that he was, really knowledgeable and had a really singular take on films. And that's true. He was insanely knowledgeable. At age 25, he had seen more movies than I probably still have in my life at 50. So he was just encyclopedic. He had not been on television before. I had done a lot of television. So we were able to kind of help each other in that way. And we have very different perspectives.
Hmm.
And it was a real honor to carry on that tradition. I mean, we shot it at WTTW, which is where they did the original sneak previews. We sat in like some of the seats that were the original seats
Oh
that
my
they sat
God.
in on that set. So that was really cool. I am very short. I'm 5 feet tall, and Ignati is like 6'6". So they would literally put like a little pillow on my seat. So I was in the same frame with him. And it was really fun. It was a really good year. And I feel honored that Roger and Chaz had that kind of faith in me and that kind of faith in us. And various folks for years now have, said to me, oh, I watched at the movies. And so I'm thankful to you that you did. It was an honor. It was a dream gig.
There was a discussion you had with about a Jean-Luc Godard film where you said, "How did you watch this 4 times?" That's my
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, that's like the most famous thing we ever did. Our little blip was he loved film
film
socialism,
socialism.
and
That's
I
what it
did
was.
not. I did not. And I'm like, why is there a llama at the gas station? And that is a thing that people like still quote to me sometimes. And I had this feeling that Ignati just in a knee jerk way would just love anything that Godard did, as a fan, and I didn't feel like he was viewing it critically. And I was like, what even is this? Like, it's incoherent. And so that was a rare example of us really going after each other. And that was fun.
So I'd love to just get a little bit of your history, Christy, with movies. Whenever I have a new guest on the show, I like to just ask about kind of like, how did you get into movies? Like, where did that love for this, your passion for cinema come from at the beginning?
It's just always been there. I mean, from my earliest days, I'm an only child, and my parents were both hugely into film and had really different tastes. Like, my mom loved foreign language films, really challenging stuff. I grew up in a suburb of LA called Woodland Hills in the Valley, and my
Yes.
mom would drive like 40 minutes out of her way to Silver Lake to the video store that had better foreign titles rather than go to like Blockbuster a few blocks away. And then my dad was more of a traditionalist, and he was really into like Humphrey Bogart, John Wayne, really classic musicals. And so between the two of them, I had a really cool film education. And looking back now, like it was just always there. Like at age 8, age 9, I was making lists of the movies that I'd want to see that were coming out that year. I would pour over the Sunday LA Times movie section back when they had like pages and pages of movie listings. Like, gather round,
Yes.
children. Let me tell you about a different time when there were newspapers, and that's how you found out what was playing at the movie theater. And so I would look at, like, oh, what is this random theater playing these movies I never heard of? When I was like 12, I'd go by myself to the theater and like go see Karate Kid, and then go to the bathroom and then like sneak back in and see Karate Kid again.
Yep. I would do
So I
that
have
too.
a lot of really important memories all throughout my life. And then just in college, I started going to like art house cinema on my own or with a friend. And then whatever job I had in whatever city it was, I would just always on my day off just seek out whatever, independent film was playing, whatever foreign film was playing. I was working for the Associated Press in their Dallas bureau in 1999. And I was working some random Saturday broadcast shift. When you work at the AP in the beginning, like you have to do every kind of shift, like overnight, Saturdays, whatever. I was working a Saturday broadcast shift, and somebody had called in looking for a film review in our archives, and we didn't have it. And as I began looking more and more, I'm like, we're not reviewing everything that comes out. Like, there's no film critic. There are people who had other beats, like they were a science writer, they were a national writer, and they would dip in and do film reviews here and there, but there was no person doing that. So I pestered the arts editor in New York, a woman named Dolores Barkley, who took a chance on me. Like, I emailed her and said, hey, I love movies. I see everything. I think my writing style would be a good fit for this. And she gave me a shot. And like, it would never go down that way today. I'm
Oh,
eternally grateful to this woman for giving me a chance of becoming a mentor and becoming a really great lifelong friend. And so Dolores took a chance on me. We moved to LA. I'm sorry, we moved from Dallas to New York in 2000 and covered film and entertainment for like 6 years. And then in 2004, I pestered a different editor who was then my editor, a gentleman named Jesse Washington, who's also a great friend of mine still. And I said, I want to be the AP's film critic. Like, there's still no film critic. I'm writing film reviews. Dave Germain, the movie writer, is writing film reviews, but there's no like dedicated full-time
right.
critic. And so like I kind of finagled my way into that, and I became the AP's first film critic. And like, they've never had one since. Like, that I left 10 years ago, and they just have like a couple different film writers doing it. There's no one full-time AP film critic. I think they've had to pivot the way a lot of news organizations have and do the most what they can with the resources they have. And so they have they're back to people writing film reviews here and there. It's their film writers, but it's not like there's no AP film critic. So I left 10 years ago, and I write for RogerEbert.com.
Right.
I did What the Flick for a while, and then that got canceled in 2018 because we were part of a larger network.
Yeah, I remember it just ended. I remember just 1 week it was just gone. It was very strange.
It was for us as well. Yeah, we have been doing What the Flick for like 8 years. We were part of a larger network called the Young Turks
Right.
Network, which is primarily progressive politics, but then they spun off. Cenk loves movies. Cenk Uygur, who created it, like loves movies and wanted a
Mm-hmm.
place to go and share his terrible opinions on movies. And so he created What the Flick. And so I was one of the original people. It was me, Ben Mankiewicz, Matt Atchity. We brought
Mm-hmm.
Alonzo in. We did it for like 8 years, and then they decided in 2018 to to pare down and get back to politics heading
Politics.
into the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was on a Monday. We showed up and the lights were off in the studio, and
What?
they told us there's no more What the Flick. And then a few days later on a Thursday, we were at my dining room table, the table where I'm sitting right now, with this podcast equipment that I'm talking to you on right now, and we made it a podcast. And so for a while we made it, we were calling ourselves What the Flick. We
Oh,
tried to
okay.
get we tried to get the What the Flick name, and they wouldn't give it to us. We tried to get the What the Flick YouTube channel, and they wouldn't give it to us. So we started our own new thing. It's called Breakfast All Day. We
Breakfast all
figured, like,
day.
who doesn't love breakfast all day? Like, it's the thing that nourishes you all day long. Like, you want pancakes at 2 in the afternoon? Why not? Why not indulge them? So we figure, like, we're here to nourish you whenever you need us. And so that is how we started this. And we have a podcast, and we have a YouTube channel, and we have a Patreon
Mm-hmm.
where we do TV recaps. And that kind of continues on the tradition of doing a lot of TV recaps from What the Flick. So we are currently doing we're doing The Mandalorian, which ends next week. We're doing Ted Lasso. We'll do Ahsoka when that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do The Great when season 3 of The Great comes
Ooh, the
out.
great.
Yeah, but we'll do, like, we did The Last of Us. We do The Handmaid's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
But then we do fun things like a limited series like Pam and Tommy, or The
Okay.
Dropout, any
Well, that
cool
was
limited
good.
series. Wasn't that good?
The
Wasn't she
Dropout was
great?
so great.
She nailed that voice, didn't she?
Oh my gosh, Amanda Seyfried was just
Yep.
amazing in that show.
She really was. And so very deserving of all the accolades and awards coming her way. So yeah, so it's sort of our thing, right? Sort of like you're doing your thing. You can make it whatever you want it to be. So that's what we're doing.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that, Christy. And again, I'm just such a huge fan. And to talk about a 50-year-old movie today, Paper
Yeah.
Moon. What are some of your favorite films of the 70s? Like, what do you think of that decade of cinema?
Well, it's so important, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
people took chances, late 60s, early 70s. People took a lot of chances and made movies that I think maybe couldn't get made today, in terms of
Right.
the content, in terms of like the daring themes. I look at even a movie like Kramer versus Kramer,
Mm.
I think really blazed a lot of trails in terms of the realism it depicts in
Mm-hmm.
a marriage falling apart. So I think it told a lot of stories of women, what women go through all the time, and that was revolutionary. It is still a very male dominated industry, but the idea of
Mm.
telling women's stories, I think, began then. um yeah, I have lots of memories. I think my earliest memory of going to a movie where I recognized that it was somebody with a point of view was probably Star Wars, the first Star
Oh, okay.
Wars.
Mm-hmm.
The first movie that, like, traumatized me was Bambi, but that came out in the 50s. I went and saw Bambi in a
But they'd
theater,
release it like every 7 years, right?
just
For
to
the longest
traumatize a
time.
whole new generation of children, for sure.
I feel like
So
that's with everybody who watches Bambi. If you're like between 4 and 9, like that movie, like you never forget the mom's death. Like that scene
yeah,
is just so traumatizing in the history of cinema.
that and like Fantasia. Can I curse?
Sure.
I won't. Well, I'll say hell.
Yeah.
Fantasia scared the hell out of me. When I was a little girl, the whole thing with like the dancing mops and the buckets, and like all like the thing with Mickey and the night on Bald Mountain, whatever, like that's scary when you're a little kid. Disney, man, they mess you up, right?
Exactly.
It's always a dead parent.
Yeah. And it's amazing, like you mentioned Kramer versus Kramer. That movie made over $100 million at the nationwide box office in 79, 1980. Like that movie
Wow.
would never. It probably wouldn't even go to theaters now,
Did
let
you just
alone
have
make
that
100 million.
information in your brain? Did you just know that
Oh,
immediately? Like,
yeah, no, I wrote a book about Meryl Streep. Like I know a lot about Meryl Streep.
oh, well, I did not know that. Well, there you go. So, yeah, but like that's true. And this, I think, why I love a movie like Air, which just came out, because
Mm.
Air harkens to like the mid-budget, smart, grown-up drama, right? In a world where we have like the franchise stuff and the Marvel stuff and the IP things we know and the sequels and the reboots and the live
Mm.
action versions of Disney animated films. And then we have really small, weird little indies that are challenging.
Yeah.
Like that mid-budget movie
Hmm.
with real stars doing something really smart and solid and just a solidly entertaining movie is rare. And I feel like a
Hmm.
lot of stuff that we saw in the 70s kind of fell into that category.
And I love that you and Alonzo champion those smaller films on Breakfast All Day. You could just focus on the big
Yeah.
blockbuster releases, but you always will, talk about those smaller films too, which is a big reason why you're awesome, Christy.
Ah, you're sweet. Thank you. No, I sort of feel like that's our mission, right? I feel like
Yeah.
as film critics, like that's your job is to shine a light on a film that people might not know about otherwise.
Hmm.
And going back to Siskel and Ebert, I feel like that was a lot of the
Yes.
allure of them too. Is that like they would talk about movies that maybe wouldn't come to your town for
Hmm.
many weeks, but like you knew they existed in the world, and then maybe
Hmm.
one day you'd go rent that movie, like foreign language films that people wouldn't have known about perhaps in the United States otherwise. So I'm really
Hmm.
thankful to them for that legacy. And I feel like we absolutely have to do that. And no, it does not get the viewership of something bigger, but I feel like that's our calling. It sounds corny, but I feel like that's part of our purpose here. Although with our channel though, like the stuff that is biggest for us and like we're
Are
seeing
the
right now, Bo
Yeah.
is Afraid,
Mm.
Tar, like our most
Okay.
viewed video is RRR.
RRR. Yeah, it's a lot. I looked at the
Parasite, like Banshees of Inisherin, Triangle of Sadness, like that kind of stuff is what our audience is
Okay.
psyched
It's
for.
not like the Mario Brothers movie is getting the most views.
That does okay for us, but there are a lot of channels that devote time to all the Star Wars stuff, all the franchise stuff that are
Right.
specifically horror movies, that are
Hmm.
specifically like animation heavy. So I feel like there maybe are a couple of other channels besides ours that will take the time to do indies. Like we just did a review of 1001
Right.
yesterday, which is
Hmm.
this great indie
Hmm.
drama starring Tiana. Ooh, God, Tiana Thomas.
It was
Boy,
a
now I'm
winner at
blanking on it.
Sundance.
Yeah, and she's tremendous in it. And of course, now I'm blanking now that I'm like on the spot talking to you about it. But like, I feel like I love that we do that too. So thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paper Moon, speaking of movies in the 70s that did well at the box office, Paper Moon was also a hit, which is like, could you imagine like a black and white historical comedy drama coming out now that was like a hit at the box office? Like that, like this is
Yeah.
very much a film of its time in terms of being successful and everyone going to see it. Paper Moon, released in May of 73, was the third hit film in a row for Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah, you mentioned What's Up, Doc, which
What's
is
the
just a perfect screwball comedy. And
Yes.
a great showcase for all that is charming about Barbara Streisand and her
Hmm.
comic timing, and Ryan O'Neal was like the perfect straight man foil for her there. So that's a lot of fun. I am friends with a guy named Peter Hartlaub at the San Francisco Chronicle, and he writes a lot about film.
Hmm.
And we had a good talk about like all the locations for What's Up, Doc, and that stairway where
Yeah.
they do the thing with the car going down the
Uh-huh.
stairs. Like nothing is ever going to be shot on those stairs again because of
Yeah.
the damage
It
that those
damaged them.
cars did on those stairs.
You don't hear about that very much in movies where they actually ruin something for real. And then they are like, no more movies can be shot here.
Practical effects, baby.
So yeah, so Peter Bogdanovich, his first big hit is The Last Picture Show in 71. Gets him Oscar nominations. He got a Best Picture nomination, one supporting actor and supporting actress at the Oscars. And then What's Up Doc comes out like 5 months later, one of the biggest hits of 72. And then his third film, Paper Moon, also a hit, Oscar-winning movie. Like this was a pretty remarkable run for Peter Bogdanovich. And then not so much after this. This is kind of like the last big film for him, at least for a while. Paper
Mm.
Moon.
Yeah. Well, I think what you see in all of those movies is what he was so known for, which is his great love and reverence of classic cinema, right?
Yes.
You see
Hmm.
that each of these films is, his version of a certain genre, his homage to, the kinds of stories that used to be told and the way they used to tell them. And so each of them is, I think, very specific and singular in their voice. but they're all so clearly him
Mm-hmm.
and his attention to detail, and like there's a classiness I think that goes along. I think, not just in his appearance with, the cravat,
Yeah, he always looks so
right?
nice. Yeah.
Right, so spiffy. But there's something like there's a solid classic nature to the kind of filmmaking that he was known for in
Hmm.
this era.
Had you seen Paper Moon before? Like, is this a film you saw when you were younger?
Yes, as a little girl, but I had
Oh,
not seen it in many years, and so I'm so happy to have the opportunity to rewatch it now.
yeah. So tell us about your experience watching it recently. Like, what did you think of the movie now in 2023?
Well, I was just so taken with Tatum O'Neal, as we
Yes.
all were. I mean, it's amazing to look back and think that this was her first film ever. Like, she was not an
Yeah.
actor. And I'm sure you know this because you probably did your research, but like Ryan and Tatum O'Neal weren't initially supposed to star in this,
Mm-hmm. It was
right?
Paul Newman and his daughter
Right. And
with John
so,
Huston directing.
right. And then when John Huston fell out, they pulled out, and then Peter Bogdanovich took over. And it was Polly Platt, Bogdanovich's
Mm-hmm.
longtime wife and collaborator, who
Right.
really was the brains of the operation in a lot of ways. Was her idea to cast Tatum O'Neal,
Yeah.
that she had never acted before. And like, what a fantastic instinct. What I love
Mm-hmm.
about this performance is that there is nothing cutesy about it at
Mm-mm.
all. There is nothing precocious. There's nothing self-conscious about it. It feels so real and so natural and so authentic. You cannot help but just watch her in amazement, because you truly feel like you're watching a child, like, who has just happens to be wise beyond her years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky thing to pull off, right? Because when young actors play that kind of role where they are wise beyond their years,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a tendency, either in the direction or the script, to like make them outlandishly brilliant and hilarious at all times. Like, there's an extreme nature to those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
characters that doesn't feel realistic. And she still feels like a bratty little kid, like she's still impulsive. Like, she's got great instincts, but Addie's still like a kid who wants to get into trouble, who gets off on pushing it. I've got a 13-year-old son, and like, kids push it. Like, they see how far they can go. But
Uh-huh.
like, she does that in ways that benefit them in terms of how they pull off their scams,
Mm-hmm.
but also in ways that are like potentially detrimental. So I think that felt very realistic. So the right Alvin Sargent, the writing is there, of course, Oscar nominated script.
Mm-hmm.
But she's amazing. She's amazing in this. And it adds an extra poignancy in those final scenes, those final
Mm.
images of the two of them together, because they are father and daughter.
Right.
Especially now in retrospect, when you know about like what that relationship was like over the years. To see
Mm-hmm.
this little time capsule is quite moving.
Yeah. What's also remarkable about her performance is that Bogdanovich has a lot of long takes with them. There's one I watched his his interview on the DVD, and there's that long shot of the car, and they're arguing, Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal, for 3 to 4 minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all done in one shot. And Bogdanovich said part of the reason why he wanted to have some long takes was to show that he was not molding a child's performance through editing, that he was able
Mm.
to let audience see this child performing for many minutes at a time. And that's something I feel like, yeah, today with a young child who doesn't have any acting experience, the director would probably be kind of scared and like have a lot of quick takes so
Yeah.
that he could kind of mold the performance in the editing room. But in this movie, you can see it's really her performing for minutes at a time.
Mhm.
And I think that's what also makes her performance so striking, is that this is not a performance that's being dealt with later. This is on the set on the day.
That's a lot of trust
Yeah.
for somebody who is 9. Because in the book, the
9 years
character
old.
is 12, and they made her younger because they wanted to match what Tatum O'Neal's age was. So,
Right.
and she's smoking. Again, the 70s were different, man. Like, right now, it'd be a cautionary tale. Right now,
Yeah.
like, no one smokes in movies anymore, especially not a 9-year-old
A
girl.
9 year old girl today smoking in a movie would get it an R rating, right? Like it'd be an R rated
Right.
film.
Or it's like, oh, this kid's in trouble, right? Like, it would be a shorthand for like, oh, this kid has no parental guidance. This kid is doomed. This kid's in trouble, right? I did a story when Convention Wallace got nominated
Yes. For
for
lead actress.
Beasts of the Southern Wild, and she was like 8, I want to
Yeah.
say. I did a story about all the youngest acting performances and all that. And I feel like I don't know if she smokes in that, but there's like a sense
Mm.
of peril all the time with her. I interviewed Justin Henry for that story. I had lunch with Justin Henry, speaking of Kramer versus Kramer,
Oh,
and
right.
he was nominated. I think he is still the youngest ever nominated. I think he was like
Yeah, like
7.
7 or 8, something around there.
It's crazy. We should talk about child stars in general at some point during this conversation because it's just such a fraught path, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Tatum O'Neal, she does the Bad News Bears after this, and she's in a couple more films. She works with Bogdanovich on one of his mid-70s films. But yeah, I mean, she is not an example of like a child star who grew up to have a successful adult career as an actor. Of course, she's in a lot of things, pops up in things here and there. But like her one moment of big success in, at least in film, was Paper Moon at the very beginning. And that's got to be a hard way to start with your first performance. You've never acted before, and then you win an Academy Award. It's like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I just think it's just tough, even if you don't reach those heights. I think it's just tough to be a child star and then to make that transition into adulthood. You know, Jodie Foster, who would go on to play the same role
A year later.
in the TV version of Paper Moon, is like the rare person who figured it out. You know, who had the stability, who had the longevity, who had the support to carve out a career. And I
Right.
think Kristen Stewart is like that too. You know, Kristen Stewart, who played her daughter in
And Panic Room. Yeah.
They're very similar in a lot of ways. I think in terms of like the persona of being no nonsense and on and off screen, and it's just, I think it's a tough thing to do. Growing up in LA, I have so many friends who were child actors who at least like did commercials, and everybody had headshots, and everybody it was, you know, it was okay to be taken out of school early to go across town for an audition or whatever. So I just sort of feel like it's such a perilous thing because you don't really have a childhood, right? Everybody expects you to be an adult all the time. And so all those formative years, all those years where you make mistakes, where you're developing in adolescence, like either they don't exist, you don't have them, they get like squished into nothing, or like they're under a microscope and every mistake is magnified, you know? So
Yeah.
I just think, of course Tatum O'Neal was screwed up from all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course she was. How could she not be? You know, and then there are addiction issues, there's instability in her home, you know, there's this tormented marriage with John McEnroe. I mean, there's so much that she endured and survived, and she is working now. But I think if she had made it out alive and carved out a career consistently, it would have been a miracle.
Yeah. And then, I mean, her relationship with her father, Ryan O'Neal, I think at this time it is great, as you mentioned before. Like, it's kind of a time capsule, but then they've had problems throughout the decades. And I even read a bit, I don't know if it's true. So it's allegedly after either she got the Oscar nomination or after she won, he hit her. Like, he was so upset that she was getting recognized by the Academy and he did not get nominated. Like, that he actually, that I read it on 2 different websites that allegedly he hit her at some point. I'm like, not that, what?
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Let
you
me think
be
about that
happy
score.
for your daughter? Like, wouldn't you be like proud? And like, that's very strange. So not a good start there.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, at this point in time, like it's all there. I think that's part of why when I look back on it, I look back with amazement at her instincts at such a young age, but also with some sadness because it's like, oh, it was all there, you know? And you
She's
see,
so gifted in this movie.
yeah,
She absolutely has the talent to carry that into adulthood and be in a lot of movies and be a movie star, I think, based off this one performance. So it's sad that that never really carried over.
for sure.
But outside of her performance, I think this is a wonderful film. Like, I just think it's entertaining, it's brisk, it keeps surprising you just when you think, okay, the whole movie is going to be the two of them doing all these con jobs. I love those scenes of like, can we ask for $10 or $12? And then Tatum O'Neal, like Addie, she looks into that house, sees that the woman has money, and she's like, $24.
Yeah, those
Those are
instincts are
great.
great. The way she thinks on her feet is so funny. And conversely, when she sees the mom with like the baby on her hip and
Right. It
four
says,
others around her,
just give it to
she
her.
yeah, and so that helps you root for her, right?
Yes.
That they're not just totally craven. I mean, he is, but she's not, and she helps shape him, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
evolve in his approach to who to swindle and who not. Like she is like the devil and the angel on his shoulder at the same time, you know.
Yeah.
And but so she has some good, some kind-hearted instincts, and we'll see that later on also with Trixie Delight's
Trixie
African
Delight.
American maid. Speaking of things that like just clang today, you couldn't do today, like
Right.
the African American maid and how much Madeline Kahn abuses her in this. But you
Right.
see the kindness she shows to her, and yeah, so
Yeah, but I feel
much.
like just when the movie needs to kind of break away and not just be the same thing over and over, that's when the great Madeline Kahn comes into the movie. And her start in film was a year before in What's Up, Doc. I guess Bogdanovich met with her to be in the film. It was just kind of like a casual meeting or something, and she just made him laugh so much that he said, "I'm putting her in What's Up, Doc." And then when they brought this character into the script, which I guess wasn't in the first script, the whole sequence with
Oh.
Trixie was not in the original screenplay, but he wanted to include it from the novel. He said the only person who can play this is Madeline Kahn. And boy, does she just like come into the movie for, what is she in the movie? 10 to 15 minutes? She's not in it very much, but she
Yeah.
makes a big impression as
She's a
Trixie.
whirlwind, right? In every way, and the way she just like commandeers it. But then that speech she gives to Addie on the hill
Oh
totally
gosh.
humanizes her.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that she is fully self-aware of how ridiculous she is and
Right.
how flawed she is and how desperate she is, but like she owns up to it in a way that like makes you feel for her
Mm-hmm.
and wins you over for sure. Um yeah, I think the fact that this takes place during the Depression
Mm-hmm.
adds this layer of desperation to everyone's actions, right? To
Mm-hmm.
the con itself, to the unlikely connections that people make with each other quickly in the name of survival,
Mm-hmm.
in the name of like hope, you know, this hard earned hope that they have here. And I think that's what that's about with him, with Moses being attracted to Trixie
Right.
and vice versa. Like they both see something in each other that they need. And that's true with Moses and Addie as well, with the added fundamental dynamic of, is he actually her father? And I love that they never
Right.
spell it out. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
clear, but I love that there's, you know, I think a movie that was not as sure of itself would like find a way to hammer home to you the answer,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like they leave it up to us to like assume without ever spelling it out verbatim.
Yeah,
You know what I
because the
mean?
film opens at the funeral of Addie's mother,
Mhm.
and then he shows up with flowers. And yeah, the movie never tells us directly, right, that he's
No.
her father. But by the end, you get the sense that, I mean, it felt like to me that he was by the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, people keep commenting on how the jawline is so similar. I mean, clearly she looks exactly like him,
Yeah, they're
but
related, so it would make
right?
sense that
You
they're
guys look similar. But the fact that they don't have any kind of like hokey maudlin, you know, scene that hammers that home, I have
right.
so much respect for. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's of the era. I think movies in at that time didn't feel the need to hold our hands and spell everything out for us, that they trusted us with some more ambiguity. So
Mm-hmm. You're waiting for that sentimental moment where they have like this father-daughter bond of some kind. The movie never gives it to you, even at the very end when she runs up to him. This is the first time I had seen it. I'd never seen this movie
oh
before. I'd
wow.
seen clips.
Hmm.
I knew of it, and I knew it was an Oscar-winning performance for supporting actress, but I had never seen the whole movie. And I'm like, how is this movie going to end? Like, she's just going to be dropped off, and he drives off. I'm like, oh, he's going to turn the car around and he's going to go pick her up and they're going to hug or something. And that's going to be the end. And that's going to be disappointing. I was so happy that she runs to him. He doesn't like greet her with a hug, or he's kind of looking at her, kind of like, what are you doing here? And she's like,
Yeah.
you still owe me $200. I was like, this is the perfect way to end the movie.
It really is. And they literally ride off into the sunset together.
Yeah.
But it's not corny.
Gorgeous shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That last shot.
It is not corny at all. Yeah, Laszlo Kovacs. We should talk about him. We should talk about the way the film is shot. I mean, I think they
Wow.
establish it's in black and white. I think they establish a sense of like desolation and melancholy from that first shot
Mm-hmm.
at the funeral.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, they set the scene emotionally from the very, very beginning as far as like what this place is like in the heartland,
Mm-hmm.
how it's been devastated. And although no one ever like really says the word depression, right? I don't think anyone ever says the word, but it's implicit in like the desperation and the way people regard each other.
Mm-hmm. Oh, like I feel like the setting of this movie, the places they go to as a character in the film. Like you don't really ever see hills. There's lots of shots where it just like the horizon just goes on forever, and they're in the middle of the country, just trying to survive in this harried time in our history in the mid 1930s. And I think the black and white cinematography is gorgeous. I love any movie made past like 1965 that's shot in black and white always looks so striking. In Cold Blood, Last Picture Show, and then Paper Moon. I mean, very few movies in the early to mid 70s are being shot in black and white. I know studios were kind of like, no, let's do it in color. But Bogdanovich insisted, and I think it helped that Last Picture Show was successful.
Yeah.
And when they were about to embark on making this movie, What's Up Doc was a huge money earner. So they were probably like, okay, you can shoot it in black and white. I cannot imagine this film in color. Bogdanovich on the audio commentary says with their blonde hair, like it would not have looked right in color. And I think he's right. I think the black and white is part of what makes this movie pop. Like it's just
Yeah.
so striking.
Yeah, there's a loneliness I think
Mm-hmm.
that captures here and also in Last Picture Show, like an isolation, a desolation, and also just a sort of a classic vibe. You know, it makes them feel like they actually are characters living in 1930. There's something about the
Right.
faces and the clothes and like the way that the black and white captures that is such an evocative time capsule. Yeah, Laszlo Kovacs also shot What's Up Doc and Mask for Bogdanovich.
Okay.
He's got this
Mask.
really eclectic filmography. He also shot Easy Rider and Shampoo,
Oh,
right? Like
nice.
biggies of the decade,
Yeah.
but then like Ghostbusters and Say Anything.
So yeah,
Right?
the genre does not matter.
Yeah, no, but he does a really impressive filmography and very much of this important era of cinema, but then like went on, had great longevity and lots of big 80s movies too. So
That's what makes cinematography such a great job, because no cinematographer is only going to do one kind of movie.
yeah.
Like they'll work with a director more than once, but they'll jump around to other genres, and that's a great example of someone who's had such an extraordinary career. What did you think of the title Paper Moon? That was not the original title. The title of the book was what, Addie Bray?
Addie Prey.
Eddie Prey,
Yeah.
and then like Bogdanovich just heard the words in a song
Yeah.
and said, "I think that would make a good title." And did you read about the story of him talking to Orson Welles?
No.
But
Tell
he
me.
asked Orson Welles on the phone, "What do you think of the movie title Paper Moon?" And Orson Welles, he said, "That title is so good, you shouldn't even make the picture. You should just release the title." That's what Orson Welles said about Paper Moon. So that's why we get the scene with the paper moon at the carnival.
Yeah.
Bogdanovich said we have to add that scene to the screenplay to make it make any sense why the movie is called that.
Well, I think it is evocative of a really critical time in their relationship, right? Because at this point at the carnival, like she's come to really like him and come to
Mm-hmm.
really care for him and view him as a father figure. And she wants to do things with him that you do with your dad. Like, let's go take a picture together. Let's go see this thing at the
Yeah.
carnival. And he is, of course, inherently selfish and narcissistic and only wants to do what he wants to do. He wants to go see Trixie Delight. And so the fact
Yes.
that she goes and gets the picture by herself, and then, you know, that's like the thing that she puts in the envelope for him to find in the car when he drives
Mm.
away, I think is so melancholy and sweet and sad, you know, and just the oxymoron of those two words together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the idea of like a moon made of paper, something that should be up there and should be stable. But the fact that this one is made of paper suggests that the relationship is, you know, a little flimsy, a little
Mm-hmm.
unreliable, and what can they make of that to make it whole?
Yeah. Absolutely. Something else I loved about the movie was that Bogdanovich shoots a lot of it from Tatum O'Neal's point of view. There's a lot of scenes in the movie where the camera is low and it's like looking up, like when that scene where she's like trying to get her $20 back after she gave her the $5 bill, and the lady's like, no, she gave me $5. That scene is shot from her perspective, like underneath. And I think giving Tatum O'Neal's character of Addie a lot of the movie's point of view, I think also helps. If it was all told from Ryan O'Neal's point of view, kind of with the camera high up, I don't think the movie would be as successful. It like really makes her, in some ways, the lead character of the movie more than he is.
Yeah, like at the carnival, like right the moment we're
Yeah, it's
talking about,
low to
where
the ground at the carnival.
she's trying to get his attention. Like, let's go get a picture together. Like the
Yeah.
camera's down low. It's also down low when she pulls the money con at the carnival.
Yeah.
The cotton candy, I want to say, is what she said.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good observation. Yeah, for sure. We are definitely in her shoes.
Mm-hmm. And there, I mean, there's so many great scenes in the movie. Them escaping that jailhouse is hilarious, and there's all sorts of great like little like inserts, and her looking at him with that smile when she's got that key, and that guy's got the gun. And then what does she say? I gotta go to the shit house. Or she
Yeah.
says something like what? Like the movie it's pretty clean, this movie, but occasionally you get that. You get I guess Madeline Kahn was completely against saying the word tits in that her big famous scene in that movie. And Bogdanovich said, please just say it one time. And she did it. And you can see her kind of like flinch when she says it in the shot, because it's the only time she does. And I do think that's the scene that got Khan the Oscar nomination, because she's so great in that scene. But that part where they escape and there's like a car chase that goes on for 5 to 10 minutes. Like this is not always just a very quiet, conversation piece of movie. Like there's some action in the film. Nothing what that What's Up Doc the year before. That movie's got a lot of screwball and chase scenes. This is a different, quieter film for sure, but there are some set pieces in this film that are really fantastic too.
Yeah, the balance in tone is very impressive here, because it begins and ends on kind of a melancholy, wistful note, but in between, like, there's some kind of raucous comedy. I mean, there's some kind of raunchy stuff involving like the hotel clerk and just the whole presence of Trixie Delight. Like, there's the fact that they are con artists and they're like swindling widows, and yet we're totally on their side the whole way. Like, that's a tough balance to pull off. Like, how do we get on their side? Why are we okay with this? And it's not just because it's the Depression and they need money. It's just because they are charming and their banter is so infectious that you kind of want to see them pull it off. Like in the tradition of the best kind of con artist movies, like the Ocean movies, for example, like you want to see them win. But
right
here, they're not stealing from a giant casino. They're stealing from women who lost their husband a week ago.
I know.
And we want to see them get away with it.
Isn't that, yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think of that. Like these women are grieving and they're pulling off this con for like $8 or $12. And we're like, come on. All right. Say yes. That guy who comes out, that one guy who's kind of scary, and Ryan O'Neal's kind of standoffish, like, oh, I'll just go back to the car. And as soon as Tatum O'Neal walks up and she starts talking to him, he's like, oh no, okay, I'll buy your Bible and I'll even pay you extra. And there's always like these little twists along the way that the movie works well, in that it makes us care about them all the way through the movie, even when they're doing these heinous things. Like we still like them, which not every movie I think could do.
Yeah, they're just charming together.
Yeah. Randy Quaid, we should mention, shows up for a cameo.
Young Randy Quaid playing a redneck.
As a redneck.
Fitting.
Which Bogdanovich said he was just about to go do The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson. He had like a week before, and Bogdanovich couldn't find an actor for that role. So Randy Quaid had been in The Last Picture Show. So he asked him as a favor to just come out for a day and do that. And that's why he's in the movie.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
We should talk about John Hillerman in like 2 different roles.
2 roles. Yeah. What did you think of his performance as 2 different people in the movie? It's really, I guess he had to like lose weight or gain weight for what, like the way they shot it would have been hard for a lot of actors, but he does look different in both parts.
He really does. And he's like low-key terrifying as the sheriff. Like he's an actual genuine threat. And like that whole scene too is such a different tone from the playfulness of the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it, the caper of the rest of it. Like they're in actual danger, when they're sitting in that sheriff's office. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was just like scary. Like
Yeah.
it's tense.
There's that great part. One of my favorite shots in the movie is Ryan O'Neal jumping over that, like, he falls into this little area where there's no escape. Like he runs up to this brick wall and the camera
Mm.
tracks with him the whole
Mm-hmm.
run up to that brick wall, and he turns around and then there's the car and they're walking towards him and they're holding guns. And you're like, this is not going to end well. This guy, like, that's one of like the most striking images in that movie too, is just
Yeah.
this guy being trapped. He's basically been able to con all these
Right.
people for the whole movie, and now there's nowhere else for him to go. So the movie, it does not let these characters off easy, which I admire too. Like they're put through the ringer throughout the film.
Yeah. And yet they still find a way to win and like have hope of like we can do this next. We can still like they would keep hope alive. Like I wonder
Mm-hmm.
what will ever finally satisfy them. Like what big score will finally make them feel like okay, we're done. Or maybe it's the
Right.
score itself that is the goal. Maybe like they're so
Mm-hmm.
hooked on the fun of the scheme, like it's
Mm.
just like walking down the street to them. It's just part of who they are.
Yeah. We should talk a little bit about the Oscars. So, this was a kind of a controversial win at the time because Tatum O'Neal is in an hour and 6 minutes of the movie, and she won Best
Mm.
Supporting Actress of the Year. Even Madeline Kahn later said she was the best actress of the movie. I was the best supporting actress, and she felt bad about losing to someone who she felt was in the wrong category. Is that something with the Oscars that ever bothers you, like the category fraud thing, or
Yes,
okay?
it does all the time. Like Jennifer Connelly in A Beautiful Mind. That is a
Yeah.
lead performance. That's
Yeah.
one of the main ones I think of when I
Yep.
think of this subject. And it's all just like strategy. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about the truth of
Yeah.
the meat of the performance, the screen time, the significance of that character. It's not about that. It's about like, where can I win? Michelle Williams,
Could have won.
if she had campaigned in supporting for the
I
Fablemans,
think she would have
she
won.
would have won.
Mm-hmm.
Despite all of the goodwill for Jamie Lee Curtis,
Yep.
I thought Angela Bassett should have won this past
She
year.
was my choice,
Personally,
Angela
me
Bassett.
too. But I think that's a Marvel bias, right? That's like, oh, we're
Yeah.
not gonna award a performance in a Marvel movie. You can have costume design and visual effects.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like if Michelle Williams had campaigned in supporting, she definitely would have won that. So that's just about like placement and ego and strategy and what the
Yeah.
studio wants to put forth. Tatum O'Neal's performance is a lead performance. She is
That's
every bit his equal.
Yeah, this one's tough because sometimes you could argue, like, well, she's a child. She's maybe like acting alongside like a major movie star. Like, I always think about like Jamie Foxx was nominated for supporting actor for Collateral, and he's the lead of that movie. And I'm like, well, is it because he's up against Tom
It's
Cruise? I
Tom
mean, that's the
Cruise.
only reason. He was also, of course, up for lead actor for Ray that year, and that's probably why they were like, let's get him two nominated. But Tatum O'Neal's a lead performance here. Could she have won in lead? This is the year that Glenda Jackson wins her second Best Actress Oscar for A Touch of Class, which is not a win that I feel like most people remember
I
or
don't.
know about. She wasn't even there. She wasn't even there to accept the Oscar. And I just watched a clip this morning of her the next day or something saying, "Oh, I wasn't there because I forgot that they were
Oh,
happening."
right.
Could
Well,
you
that was last
imagine?
night. Wait,
Can you
so who
imagine
else was
today
no?
someone forgetting?
No, because like the person who like made the dress for them would be pissed. Like we had a whole structure of a people and a team. Who else was nominated for Best Actress that year?
Let's see who comes to mind. Ellen Burstyn for The Exorcist was up
Ooh,
there.
a rare example of
Um,
horror performance getting nominated, right?
yeah, let me pull it. So Ellen Burstyn would win the next year for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. I feel like she got close a couple times. She was nominated for The Last Picture Show, but then she lost to another actor from The Last Picture Show, Cloris Leachman. The other three were Marsha Mason for Cinderella Liberty, Joanne Woodward for Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams, and Barbara Streisand for The Way We Were.
Oh.
So I would say maybe Ellen Burstyn was in second place. Like that's a great performance. The Exorcist came out at the very end of the year, but it is a horror film, so maybe that went against her. I don't know.
There's an inherent prejudice, I think, against horror performances for sure. The fact that she got nominated, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, like Barbara Streisand is so good in The Way We Were.
Mm-hmm. She had just won for Funny Girl 5 years before, so maybe there was the thinking of, well, we've already given her one, but that didn't hurt Glenda Jackson. She had won 4 years before for Women in Love, and then she won. So yeah, that's kind of a tough one. There's not one person in that category that was like an obvious front runner. So maybe Tatum O'Neal could have won in lead actress. That could have happened. I don't know how much in like 74 the Academy wanted to give like a 9-year-old or 10-year-old girl lead actress Oscar. Maybe that wouldn't have happened, but
she was 10 by then.
She was 10.
Okay.
She was 10. And she is she like the youngest? I think she's the youngest Oscar winner for a competitive Academy Award. Like they gave Shirley Temple one in the 30s, like an honorary Oscar at like 6. It was like an honorary. But she won.
Still the youngest.
She's still the youngest to this day. She was up against her kind of co-star, Madeline Kahn, who was also nominated. The other nominees were Linda Blair for The Exorcist. That would have been a cool win, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine? Wow.
Like what a performance she gives in that. And then Candy Clark.
Too. How old was
she was
Linda Blair?
she was like 13.
She was like
a
teenager too.
12. I think she shot the film when she was like 12. And I'm very excited. That comes out in December. That's one of my favorite films of the 70s. So we're talking The Exorcist at the end of the year. The other nominees were Candy Clark for American Graffiti and Sylvia Sidney in Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams. I don't know anything about that Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams movie. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. But Candy Clark is charming in American Graffiti. That's a fun performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a summer release. We're talking that in July. But yeah, there's not an either lead or supporting actress. There's not like an obvious like, oh, well, this person could have won over Tatum O'Neal. Like, I feel like if you're looking at those 5 names and supporting actress, Tatum O'Neal just jumps out because she's so great.
Right. Yeah, right? That's true. Yeah. And I'm glad that she won, but you're right. It's always a fun conversation to have. Like, is this lead? Is this supporting?
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean, I'm happy that she has an Oscar for this, but it is one of the most ridiculous wins for in a supporting category at the Oscars. So as we go into our final 2 segments here, Christy, anything else you wanted to say about Paper Moon? Any final thoughts? Like, what would you give this out of 10? On your show, you always give a movie out of 10.
Yeah, we do. I mean, like a 9.8. Like, it's very up there, you know? It's totally charming. It zips by.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's an hour and 40. It's not super long.
The script is it's so sharp and the dialogue is so snappy and they have such fantastic chemistry and it's just I use the word evocative a lot, but it really puts you in this place and time, you know, in terms of mood. Production design, costume design is all very detailed and very specific. I love the way it's shot. The use of the songs and the Jack Benny radio puts you in that place and time. So yeah, it's really great. And it's just cool to see them together, you know, this little time capsule of this happy time in their lives.
Yeah, I would give it like a 9.8 too. I mean, this is probably my favorite 73 title we've looked at. We also looked at Cries and Whispers by Ingmar Bergman. That's a terrific film we looked at in March. But this would probably be my favorite so far. It is such a timeless movie. Like, it does not feel, you would not be able to watch this and be like, they shot this in 1972. Like this one, you'd be like, I don't know. Like this, I mean, you can tell it's later. You can tell it's not like 1947, but like there's something about it that feels like it could have been made any decade in a way. And the performances just pop off the screen. If there was like one quibble I'd have with the movie, I felt like the segment at the hotel with Madeline Kahn in the bed, that goes on maybe 5 minutes too long. And I do like when Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal are on screen together. Their banter is so much fun. And they're kind of separated a little bit for that short segment in the middle of the movie. I could feel the length a little bit there. Yeah. Other than that, like there's nothing wrong with this movie. Like it's just a great time. And don't be scared that it's a 1973 black and white drama. Like this is a great watch any year. If you've never seen Paper Moon, check it out. I absolutely love this movie.
Very entertaining. Yes.
Yes. All right, our final two segments. The first one is the Divine Double Feature. We pick a modern film to pair with it. What would be your modern film to pair with Paper Moon?
Cajillionaire
Gajillionaire.
from
I don't know this movie.
2020. Oh, this
Tell
is
me
a
about this
cool
movie.
little Miranda July indie from 2020. I think
Okay.
it kind of got, it was 2020 when it came out. So I think like it kind of got swallowed up in the beginning of the pandemic there. But it's this family of con artists
Mm.
living in LA in a really bland, like intentionally generic, bland, like not glamorous part of LA. And it's Evan Rachel Wood, and her parents are Deborah Winger and Richard Jenkins.
How have I
And
not seen this movie? This sounds great.
Kajillionaire, Kaji,
Writing it
Illionaire.
down.
Please do. It's really great. And it's just understated in its weirdness. And they're this family of con artists. And then they meet Gina Rodriguez's character. And the parents want to bring her into the con
Mm.
and incorporate her. Like she's perky and funny. And Rachel Wood's character is like really dour and like really understated. And Gina Rodriguez is the total opposite. And they see something in her that they think is going to be potentially profitable for them. And it's how they adapt their con to incorporate her and how they all work with each other. And so
Mm.
it's weird and sweet and charming and very funny. So Cajillionaire, family of con artists. That's what I would
That's
pick.
awesome. Oh, I love that pick. I love con artist movies. We don't get enough of them, right?
Yeah. So why are they so popular, do you think? What is it about that kind of story that is so alluring to us?
Well, I think a lot of people love the idea of pulling cons, but most people are too afraid. Like most people are like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to, I don't want to have the cops after me. So there is something it's kind of like when you go to a scary movie, you're in a safe environment, but you're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to scream. I think con artist stories are they have that element of like, ooh, I wish I could do that. I might be too afraid to pull that off. I know it's not, has a great legacy, but I really like the Heartbreakers movie with Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt, where they play the con artists. Have you seen that movie from
Oh,
2001?
yeah, but I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, they're
Remind
con
me.
artists. It has elements of Paper Moon in that, like it's a mother and daughter, and to survive, they're just like they're pulling cons left and right. Her like scheming with like marrying rich men, and then they die, and it's a comedy. It's more of like a just kind of like a middle of the road comedy. But those kind of con artist movies are really fun. I really like that. Ooh, I see an animal walking in the
Oh,
back.
that's my dog. That's Baxter. I have a Boston Terrier named Baxter, and he was just sitting in the sunshine in the backyard. My back door is open, and he just
Oh,
walked back
okay.
in to go lie down someplace else.
So my choice was I was thinking of like what's a really great father daughter movie I've seen recently. It's obviously different in tone, but I went with After Sun, which I thought was just a beautiful film,
Oh,
which
After
is
Sun.
different kind of tone and film. But I just watched that. That was one of the last films I saw before the Oscars, so I watched it in I think late February, and I was just in tears at the end. It was so well made, so personal, right? I think a big reason why especially this film and Last Picture Show are so great is that they're very personal to Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich has two daughters, and it's part of the reason why he decided to do Paper Moon. And then I don't know if I've seen any film in the last year that felt as personal as After Sun. I just found it so moving, just a rich narrative, great performances, and I think would be an interesting pairing with Paper Moon.
Yeah, we at LA Film Critics Association, we gave After Sun our editing award
Oh,
because the way it's edited is so crucial
mm-hmm.
to putting you in her mindset and to putting you in that kind of foggy ethereal space of like what is something that she actually experienced
Mm,
and what is something that she imagined, because so
right.
many things happen in After Sun that she couldn't possibly know,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like when he's standing on the balcony and she's asleep, like she's in the foreground
Mm-hmm.
lying on bed, she's sleeping, but we're seeing things that he does that she couldn't possibly know about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just the whole way that the last bit with the strobe lights on the dance floor, the way that's edited and how revealing that is, and like the aha of that is so clever
Mm-hmm.
and like subtle. I think it's a movie that rewards paying attention. It can
Yeah.
be easy to, if you're like looking at your phone or you're doing something else, to go like, what
Yes.
is happening here? You've got to let yourself get immersed into the vibe of it. And it's very rewarding, as you say, quite emotional at the end.
Do you ever struggle with that? Like if you're not super engaged in a film you're watching that you're going to review, like to like still keep the phone away?
Oh yeah, you got to turn the phone off. You can't look at it,
Yeah.
We have to devote your attention to the art. It sounds
Yeah.
cheesy, but like it's unfair to the person whose work you're assessing if your
Right.
attention is elsewhere.
Yeah. No, it's like even when you're at home, I feel like if you're going to take 90 minutes to 2 hours to watch a film, you need to put the phone away because you can't really get the most out of it if you're even just glancing at it. Like it's like you have to just watch the movie. And After Sun is absolutely a film. Like you have to give all of your attention to that, or else you're not going to get as much out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also that I like that choice also because it's like it's a good little time capsule of
Yes. Mm-hmm.
this vacation, like this thing that is so delicate that can't last, right? They
Mm-hmm.
can't be together in this place forever. And in terms of like the
Right.
pop
Mm-hmm.
culture of it, like we know that this moment in time can't last. And so it's very
Yeah.
melancholy and kind of wistful in that way too.
I love that editing choice. That's great. I wish the movie had done better at the Oscars and only got Best Actor. I mean, that was kind of like a last minute. I wasn't sure if Paul Mescal was going to get in there, but I think it should have been an original screenplay, and editing would have been great. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe not enough folks saw it.
Not enough people saw it.
Right.
But yeah, so those are two good choices for the Divine double feature. Kajillionaire. I'm going to check that one out. I don't know how that one passed me by, but I'm going to watch it. Find it streaming somewhere, hopefully.
Yeah. It probably is.
Yeah. All right, our final segment, Beyond the Flick. I thought we'd just talk a little bit about Tatum O'Neal today. What other Tatum O'Neal films have you seen, Christy?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is the Bad News Bears.
Yes.
We have a thing on Breakfast All Day, which is kind of similar to what you're doing here, your whole raison d'etre. It's a series that we call "Was It Great or Were You
Yes.
Eight?" This is a phrase that Alonzo liked, and I thought, let's do a whole bunch of movies where we
Mm-hmm.
go back to films that we love when we were 8 years old and revisit them as grown ass people to determine are these truly great films or do we just love them in retrospect because of nostalgia?
Yeah.
And so he's a few years older than I am. I just turned 50 last summer. So my 8 movies are like 1980, 1981, and his are like 75, 76.
Okay.
But his first one that he chose was Bad News Bears.
Oh, okay.
And again, the thing that you see with Tatum O'Neal in that film is like that naturalism that
Mm-hmm.
is so authentic. Does her instincts feel so true at all times? She's adorable. You can't stop looking at
Mm-hmm.
her. And she has this fantastic, like, tough girl, no nonsense persona that she had in Paper Moon. She
Mm-hmm.
has great banter with Walter Matthau. Again, where there's eventually a softening and a vulnerability to her that breaks your heart when
Mm-hmm.
she lets herself open up to him as a father figure, and he's rejecting of her, not unlike
Mm.
Ryan O'Neal and Paper Moon. So it's got so much going on that seems like a natural extension of this really cool persona that she was creating for herself on screen. And then the other one is a movie called Little Darlings,
Okay.
which
Tell me
I
about Little
don't
Darling.
think could get made today. Christy McNichol, there's a time capsule for you. Christy McNichol and Tatum O'Neal play these two totally different young women at summer camp who compete to see who can lose their virginity first. Right?
This is like what, 1980? Like
I'm going to
late
look it up. I
70s,
think it's
something
like
around 80?
80, 81.
Okay.
Okay. So now I got to look it up.
So she's one of the two leads.
Right. So she is this spoiled rich girl and is very prim and prissy. And Christy McNichol is, you'll be shocked to learn this, a tomboy. 1980.
1980.
Two 15-year-old girls from different sides of the tracks compete to see who will be the first to lose their virginity while at summer camp. And it co-stars Armand Asante and Matt Dillon.
Matt Dillon. Oh my
Right.
God.
And those are their targets. So Tatum O'Neal goes after Armand Asante and Christy McNichol goes after Matt Dillon. And so it's a movie that I don't think could get made today. Just the idea of like women having their own raunchy 80s sex comedy. This is like the purview of men in movies like Porky's, the Porky's movies, Meatballs, Spring Break, Hot Dog the movie, all those raunchy 80s teen sex comedies. Here's a girl version of it. And I think it's different from something like Booksmart. Like
Oh, okay.
Booksmart's like the smart version of
Right.
that. We just showed our son Superbad last night for the first time.
Great movie.
Yes, so good. So I'm like, now we got to watch Booksmart because it's the girl version of it. Anyway, so Tatum O'Neal is a character named Ferris, Ferris, who is very prim. And so I recall that too. That seemed very racy to me. And maybe you'll have to do a Was It Great or Were You 8 version for that, because that was, what year was it? It was 1980. It came out March 21st, 1980. So I wasn't quite 8 yet. But maybe we can
Okay.
fudge it.
So you weren't seeing that one in the theater.
I saw it though. I don't know how I saw it.
At 8?
There is so much stuff that, like, I don't know. Like, I saw Fame when I was 8. Like, there's an abortion in Fame. Fame is,
wow.
Remember, Irene Cara has to like get topless in Fame. Stuff happens. My parents were very permissive.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very lucky to have a dad who loves horror films. He was showing me all the R-rated stuff when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. Like, he showed me The Evil Dead when I was like 9, and it was so gross that I left the room, I threw up, and I came back and I finished the movie.
Right. I saw The Exorcist, The Shining, the Amityville Horror when I was about that age.
Yeah, and eventually, like 11, 12, you'd go to like friends' houses, and then we'd like put on The Shining, and we'd watch. That's where we first started seeing Hitchcock stuff, and sometimes it's like with your friends, like at a party where you watch something you're not supposed to yet. You're not old enough yet, but we're gonna watch it anyway.
Right. That's how we saw Fast Times at Ridgemont High when I was like 10.
Yeah.
Are you 50 also? How old are you, if I may ask?
I'm 38. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was gonna say you're not 50. Is that where you got the 50 from? Is that why
you look younger than me though, Christy? So we should flip that.
It's all makeup and lighting, baby. Wait, crow's feet are in here. They're all in here.
Yeah, people, when I started this podcast, they were like, "Why are you calling it Film at 50? You're in your 30s." Yeah. Because they came out 50 years ago. Yeah. I'm not 50, but I will be. That would be really cool if I'm still doing this when I'm 50 and I can say my closing line, which I'll say in a few minutes. But 50 years old. I do think that these movies with Tatum O'Neal, like they haven't had much of a legacy beyond Bad News Bears. I mean, the other film you mentioned, which I just forgot the title already,
Little Darlings.
Little Darlings. Is that movie like
Little Darlings
talked about anymore? Is that being screened anywhere? I don't think so.
I think I just remember it because when I was a kid, when it came out, it just seemed very like raunchy and racy and naughty and wrong, which of course made it more appealing to me.
Yeah. Like that for me, that movie was American Pie that came out in the summer of 99. And I was 13, 14. And that was like a fun one. That was one of the earliest films I saw with like a group of friends, like teenage friends. We're in like 8th grade and let's go see American Pie. And
was that shocking to you?
And it was shocking. It was shocking. There were scenes in that film at 14. I was like, what is happening here?
I have questions. What's he doing to that pie?
Yeah. I think if I had seen that movie when I was 8, I would have just lost my mind. So I'm happy I was at least 14. But
Little Darlings, by the way, you can rent on Prime Video.
Oh, okay. Yeah, usually, like, unless it's really obscure, you can like pay $3 and rent it on Amazon. Usually they have something. And what I have found with this podcast, outside of one movie called Moving On, I believe the title was, you're always able to find it somewhere. Even in the deep, dark side of the web, you can find a copy of pretty much anything.
Kajillionaire is free on Freevee.
Oh, Freevee,
Amazon,
with the ads. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you can watch it on Prime Video. You can rent it for $3. So
one day after Angela Lansbury passed, I had never seen Murder, She Wrote. I'd never seen an episode. And I thought, let me watch season 1. And I was on Freevee and I watched the first 2 episodes. There were so many ads. I just couldn't do it. I was like, I need to get like a DVD box set or something. I can't sit through like, 20 minutes of ads for a 40-minute episode of Murder,
They're in weird places, right? Like,
yeah, it'll just be random
dialogue.
So yeah, I don't have much to add there. She's in This Is 40, which I saw in the theater, but I can't remember who. Do you remember who she was in that?
I don't.
I don't remember.
I know she's on Dancing with the Stars.
And she's on Dancing with the Stars. My like one kind of interesting tidbit about her is that I've been to the Sundance Film Festival only 3 times. I went in high school in 2003, and she premiered her movie. I believe it was in like the dramatic competition called The Technical Writer. And if you look it up on IMDb, there's not even a poster. Like there's nothing. It's like blank. So I don't think that's available anywhere. I would be surprised. But I saw it at the premiere, and Tatum O'Neal was there, and she introduced the film. She was there for a Q&A afterward.
Okay.
On IMDb, it says it's about a bored housewife who attempts to lure an agoraphobic technical writer out of his apartment and into the heart of New York City. It was not one of my favorite films. I really like The Shape of Things at that festival with Paul Rudd and Rachel Weisz. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but Neil LaBute, yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's in The Runaways. She's Cherie Curry's mom in The Runaways. Speaking
I never saw The
Runaways.
Runaways.
Kristen Stewart plays Joan Jett in that.
Right.
And Dakota Fanning is Cherie Curry. And so Tatum O'Neal is her mom in that.
Yeah. And she's still acting, isn't she? I think I looked up, she's in like a 2021 film. Like she's still acting in things to this day. Okay. I don't know if she has anything coming out. But her career has been kind of rocky. Like she'll go like 3-4 years with nothing. But she's not an actor who like has like a 20-year gap on her IMDb. Like every decade she's got stuff. Like she's in TV and film and kind of all over the place. But they're after Paper Moon and Bad News Bears. There's not like that one like great role she got as an adult actress. Maybe it's still to come. That would be fantastic. Wouldn't it be cool in the next 10 years if like a Darren Aronofsky gave Tatum O'Neal some amazing role in a movie or something? Like all it takes is a great director.
The reconnaissance for Tatum O'Neal.
Yes, because she is so great in Paper Moon that there's a great adult performance from her in the right project with the right director, and hopefully it's still to come.
I agree.
All right, that takes us to the end here, Christy. Thanks so much for being on Film at 50 for the first time. This was a huge thrill for me. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to, you talked about it a little bit before, but if there's anything else you want to promote, talk about where readers can, where our listeners can find you online, now would be the time.
Yeah, so we are Breakfast All Day on YouTube and on a podcast of our own. Mm-hmm. We also have a Patreon. Look up Breakfast All Day there. I am at Christy Lemire on Twitter.
Okay.
You can find us there. We are at Be Fast All Day on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I write for RogerEbert.com. I do a ton of radio. I do both KPCC Film Week and KCRW Press Play, both of the NPR stations in Los Angeles. So everywhere, all over the place. You can find our stuff. We are not shy.
You're not doing enough, Christy. Come on.
Well, with all film critics, right? We all have like 6 jobs and no
right.
jobs. Like unless you're Manola Dargis, like we all have 6 jobs and no job. So
yeah, exactly. But again, I love the work that you're doing, Christy. You are just one of my all-time favorites. One of the highlights of my year so far, Christy, is to have you on this podcast today. So thank you for doing this for me.
Well, you're sweet for asking. It was really a pleasure, and I love talking with you. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So after almost 3 years and 144 episodes, I am saying goodbye to Film at 50. I have loved doing this podcast, and I want to thank you if you've been listening to this just for the last few weeks, or you've been here since 2020 when I launched. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your interest in my podcast and for taking the journey back to the 1970s. I want to thank anyone who's been a guest on my podcast. I have had so many amazing people, so many film critics I have looked up to for years, and people I reached out to who didn't have to say yes, but did. I have so many great memories here. Part of me wants to do this podcast forever, but right now, I want to put my focus on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/BrianRoeVideo, and also follow me on Twitter at Mr. Brian Rowe, Mr. Brian Rowe. So definitely check that out if you want to continue following my content. This is not necessarily goodbye to podcasting. I might down the road return with an Oscars podcast. I'm going to take a little break right now. We'll see how I feel in the months to come. But for now, I'm saying goodbye to Film at 50 for the last time. Remember, 50 never looked this good.